The climate finance remains a critical priority. The hemisphere has entered another hurricane season, a stark reminder of what could lie ahead for the next 6 months. For countries like Jamaica, which are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, global emissions must be capped to net zero. Adaptation and mitigation solutions must be implemented.
Paying the world's climate debt, research suggests wealthy countries must double their commitment to help smaller economies cope with the cost of global warming.
Now, as Jamaicans rebuild from the wreckage left behind by Hurricane Melissa, one powerful question hangs in the air. If science proves that man-made emissions made this storm worse, can Jamaica hold those countries accountable? Could Jamaica actually sue the nations that, in every scientific sense, helped create Hurricane Melissa?
Climate change, Madam President, is not a distant threat or an academic consideration. It is a daily reality for small island developing states like Jamaica. Frequent hurricanes, droughts, and erratic rainfall destroy infrastructure, displace communities, and set back decades of hard-fought progress. Jamaica has demonstrated unwavering leadership in climate action despite our limited resources. We have committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050 and have implemented our national adaptation plan with specific measures to build resilience across key sectors, and we are on track to achieve our renewable energy target of 50% by 2030. However, our efforts and those of other SIDS are severely constrained by the lack of predictable access to financing. The promise of $100 billion annually remains unfulfilled. The Loss and Damage Fund established at COP28 was historic, yet its initial capitalization of $800 million is grossly inadequate. Developed countries must honor their commitments and scale up climate finance, recognizing that adaptation is a necessity for the survival of small island developing states.
The science behind the storm. Climate scientists have long warned that warmer oceans act like jet fuel for hurricanes. When the surface of the sea heats up, storms gain strength faster and grow larger, pulling in more moisture and energy. Hurricane Melissa followed that exact pattern, exploding in power just hours before landfall, a process experts directly link to climate change. Studies from global climate agencies confirm that Caribbean hurricanes are now more intense and more destructive than ever before. For Jamaica, these findings are not abstract theories, they're lived reality. In just 2 decades, hurricanes and floods have wiped out billions in infrastructure, homes, and crops. Yet, Jamaica contributes less than 0.1% of global emissions. The injustice is clear. The richest nations cause the damage, while small islands like ours pay the ultimate price. That's why the idea of climate accountability is gaining traction, demanding that the biggest emitters face consequences. If experts can provide strong scientific evidence that Hurricane Melissa's strength was amplified by man-made warming, Jamaica could use that data as legal ammunition in future international cases. It would mark a turning point, transforming climate change from a scientific discussion into a question of legal responsibility. Could Jamaica really sue? In theory, yes, Jamaica could attempt to sue. But in practice, the path is extremely complex. There is no single global court where one nation can simply sue another for the effects of climate change. Current international law doesn't clearly define liability for emissions. However, that's starting to change. Small island nations such as Vanuatu, Tuvalu, and Antigua and Barbuda have taken bold steps by filing climate-related cases before the International Court of Justice, ICJ, and the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, ITLOS. These countries argue that large polluters have violated their international obligations to protect the environment and human rights. If the ICJ rules in their favor, it could establish a powerful precedent, one that Jamaica could use in its own claims. Even without winning direct financial damages, such legal recognition would give Jamaica greater leverage in climate negotiations, especially in demanding stronger adaptation funding and debt relief tied to climate disasters. For Jamaica, Pursuing such action would be more than a legal case. It would be a moral statement. A declaration that small nations refuse to suffer silently while others profit from the very industry, the political reality. But suing the world's biggest powers comes with serious political risks. The same countries most responsible for emissions, the United States, China, India, and the European Union, are also Jamaica's major trading partners and investors. Taking them to court could strain diplomatic relations or slow foreign aid. That's why many Caribbean nations are pushing for collective action instead of individual lawsuits. Through CARICOM and the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, they are lobbying for fair treatment and financial compensation under international agreements. The Loss and Damage Fund, established during global climate talks, is designed to compensate nations hit hardest by disasters they didn't cause. Jamaica can and should use Hurricane Melissa's devastation to strengthen its case for support, arguing that science clearly links the storm's fury to global pollution. The goal isn't revenge, it's justice, making sure that those who pollute the most help those who suffer the most. In the end, whether through diplomacy, collective pressure, or a groundbreaking court case, one truth remains: Jamaica deserves climate justice. Hurricane Melissa was not merely an act of nature, it was a warning from a world out of balance. And if the world's biggest polluters don't change course soon, the next storm won't just hit our shores, it might hit them in the courtroom. Jamaica has always been resilient, but resilience shouldn't mean rebuilding forever. Maybe it's time the world's biggest polluters finally pay their share before the next Hurricane Melissa comes for us all.